Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. Economist Sanjeev Sanyal, a member of Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, has commented on the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency's DOGE's announcement to slash US funding worth $21 million for India to increase voter turnout. In response, Sanyal called USA the biggest scam in human history. This comes after DOGE, established under the Donald Trump administration to oversee and cut government spending, said it had decided to slash $723 million in foreign aid funding as part of its broader budget overhaul plans. The funding includes $21 million grants for aid for India and also a $29 million program to strengthen Bangladesh's political landscape. As domestic politics continues over this controversy, the question that arises is of course, what this decision's ramifications are. Joining us now live is Ambassador Bhashpati Mukherjee, former diplomat. We also have Sumit Peer, political commentator, live with us. Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, is joining us live. Dr. Jaideep Bhattacharya, President CDEPR, is also with us on the broadcast. Ambassador Mukherjee, let me begin with you first. What do you make of this big move by the US's DOGE, and what implications this decision has for India? Also, Sanjeev Sanyal, of course, says that these were all funds that were perhaps being used or rather misused by US aid.
Yes, so there's Sanjeev Sanyal's article, which has been circulating on social media since yesterday night, is very clear and categorical and makes the very important point that these huge funds have clearly been manipulated for the interests of the US deep state, which may not actually coincide with the strategic partnership that the United States has with that particular country. Let's say, as an example, India. Why should such a huge amount of money be put aside for the world's largest democracy, which has free and fair elections, but for the purpose of voter manipulation by the opposition, which means that the United States deep state was collaborating with India's opposition to interfere in a free and fair election process and to ensure that the ruling government of that time, which happens to be the same as now, would not be re-elected through manipulation of voters. That's a very, very serious matter. The same for Bangladesh. Have funds been used in order to maneuver or engineer a regime change, which has actually caused huge political upheaval in Bangladesh, has resulted in the ill treatment and death of minorities, including Hindus, and which has actually endangered India's territorial peace and security in the east and in the northeast. So the point that Sanjeev Sanyal has made, and it's being followed closely on X, is that under the Biden administration, clearly the president was not being fully briefed about what was happening, because his public pronouncements were clearly in support of India, and he made many concessions to India in order to strengthen the strategic partnership, while below him, the American deep state was indulging in maneuvers to ensure that a highly popular government led by a dynamic prime minister would not be re-elected through voter manipulation, which in other words, in simple undiplomatic language, Uday, means interference in the internal affairs of India. That's a very, very serious matter.
Absolutely. Let me in fact quickly then also take that across to Sumit Peer. Sumit Peer, the big questions as being raised by Sanjeev Sanyal are, he's wondering who the $21 million went to in India. This fund was reportedly allocated to improve voter turnout. Now, how was that proposed to happen, and did it happen, is the big question. Sumit.
Uday, thank you for having me on your show. A very important discussion today, because there are a couple of things which are very clear now. The first thing which I've been always maintaining, it is very difficult to know where does the deep state end, where do the Democrats begin, or where do the Democrats end and deep state begin. I always said it is Barkat Hussain Obama who is calling the shots. Biden was not in practically there for last 2 years because of his medical conditions. He used to miss a step. He used to walk to a side way. We could see all those medical conditions which were very visibly visible then. So it was Obama who was calling the shots, and Obama recently needed to divorce his wife also. That is basically to save 50% of their wealth. That's what rich people do nowadays. But anyway, now the question here is that we have a proof, courtesy Donald Trump, that there was a money, around 3 billion, $3.6 billion were allocated for political and election interference at the world. A good amount of money of that would come to India. $21 million was paid to some people in India, which might be some NGOs, which might be some journalists, which might be some people who were on their payroll to manipulate the opinions. Before that, we were aware of a company called Cambridge Analytica, which was hired to do the data manipulation and all. After Cambridge Analytica, we are now aware and coming to know this $21 million is specifically allocated for voter turnout. So is it voter turnout for one particular community, one particular section of voters, enabling somebody and disabling somebody? If that is the question, what is the loci and what is the business of United States of America to interfere in Indian elections? Cambridge Analytica, we know that is done and dusted. Now this is a proof you are directly interfering in the election process of India, and you are spending millions of dollars to make sure that a very nationalistic leader, which you called as a, they call Prime Minister Modi as a nationalist authoritarian, according to their definition, does not come to the power, because you want people who come to the power talk of coalition dharma. You want people who come to the power talk of alliance dharma. You want people who come to the power to a Chinese Communist Party MOU. And incidentally, there is one more allegation which I was looking into the media today, Uday, and it talks about Mr. S.Y. Qureshi, the then election commission, having signed some kind of MOU with this company. So this is very serious. I mean, you can argue that MOU doesn't have financial implications. It covers this. It doesn't cover this. But why does the Election Commission of India, under the leadership of S.Y. Qureshi ji, need to sign a MOU with this company which has dubious character and which was kind of established and which was mandated to interfere in the election process of India? I'm quoting Mr. Amit Walmia here, who has written a piece on X on this. Now, it is a very, very serious allegation. That means you are letting Election Commission of India, the most renowned body of India, to get infiltrated and get influenced and then possibly get cajoled as per foreign influence and foreign preferences. So, are we saying that in a way deep state kind of managed or was enabled to infiltrate the Election Commission of India? So did you clear the way for deep state to interfere the Election Commission of India? On the same time, you were going to Cambridge Analytica and asking them to manipulate the data. Your whole mission and vision was to stop Prime Minister Modi from getting elected again. We wanted not to get him elected first time, then second time you tried, and third time you tried all tooth and nail. You threw everything into it, including the kitchen sink. But by the way, Uday, even these all efforts had some implication. Look, why did Donald Trump got this Foreign Corruption Act, for Foreign Corruption Act? The reason was this: trillions of dollars which US aid which was used for that. And if you go as per the media, American media, even in the last 1 year or 1.5 years of Donald Trump's last term, Homeland Department was not listening to him. Where have you seen that when a new president comes, he revokes the security clearance of Joe Biden? He revokes the security clearance of Jack Sullivan. He revokes the security clearance of Anthony Blinken. Kahan hota hai ye? So there has been some serious, things which have happened here. And let me tell you another fact today. Jack Sullivan, Anthony Blinken, and Bill Burns, the former director of CIA, do you know which company they come from? They all were hired from one particular company. And the people who own that company is an Iranian American and a Pakistani American. This is all documented. So with these kind of connections which are coming out, I really am flabbergasted looking at the amount of skeletons which are coming out of the cupboard. And I think it was a very concerted effort to stop India, and that is why we could see these NGOs coming on the roads. We could see we have a nuclear power plant coming up. People will get into the neck deep water. We have to close the Sterlite plant. We had arson in the Taiwanese manufacturer here. We had a Bangalore facility of an iPhone manufacturer which got kind of vandalized. So we have seen, and in the top of COVID, we have an LG plant leaking gas, where it was completely shut. When you look at all sequence of events, it was that millions of dollars were allocated to cause disturbance here, to interfere in the elections, to make sure Prime Minister Modi never comes to the power against, and in their words, nationalist authoritarian should not come to the power, because this man commands the authority and he can take tough decisions. You want this lame duck governments to come here. You want the orders and the policies of India to be written in the Washington, and somebody here just signs it, and somebody can even come and tear the audience of the Prime Minister. You want that kind of a fiasco and chaos here. There are two questions. What is in that MOU with Chinese Communist Party? What is the MOU Shri S.Y. Qureshi ji has signed with this particular company? These two things need to be now investigated, because now there is enough credible evidence which is coming from the America itself that something is wrong. We have a very clear-cut case of election interference, letting these foreign bodies interfere in our election commission or paving the way for them. I mean, I don't know what is the reality. These are all allegations, but they need to be thoroughly interfered.
Absolutely. Let me, in fact, quickly draw in Professor Nalapat as well at this point onto the broadcast. Professor Nalapat, now, big questions, of course, arising after this, money breakup was, of course, has come to the fore. Obviously, this is a decision now that Elon Musk's DOGE have taken, the US president approving it. This funding has to stop, is what the Trump administration says. But what was this funding meant for in the first place? What was the US intending to do? Was the Indian elections being interfered with? What do you make of these serious charges that Sanjeev Sanyal is now leveling?
Well, the one-word answer is yes. And may I point out that during President Trump's first term, these same elements worked to ensure that Trump would lose the next election. And he is quite aware of that. Now that he is president again, he would have access to a lot of data on the activities of these agencies. And no wonder, frankly, that the new National Security Advisor made it very clear that the old National Security team, by 12:01, that is just 1 minute past noon on the 20th of January, they have to leave their offices or they'll be forcibly relocated. But these people were not involved in American security. They were involved in undermining American security by, first of all, undermining a sitting president, then trying to send a former president to jail so that he poses no threat to the rival candidate. At that time, they thought it was Joe Biden. A lot of books were written about that, fear and all kinds of terrible things, that if Trump were to come to power. I mean, one of them who wrote such books was Bob Woodward. A whole ecosystem was built to spew out this venom against Donald Trump, and frankly, to spew out the similar venom now that he has stood for re-election, and now he has won the election. So it's small wonder that Trump was ensured that this time around, he is going to have reliable, loyal people on his team.
Yes.
Who will not subvert the commander-in-chief. General Mark Milley, the commander-in-chief during Trump's first term, he rang up his Chinese counterpart and told him, please, don't worry, I am going to disobey my commander-in-chief. Now, can you imagine how happy a Chinese would be? And is it a coincidence that practically all the targets were also targets of the Chinese state, that both worked together? They worked together to basically discredit the leaders of democracies and ensure that they were removed from office. And what has replaced them? You look at the great regime change expert Hillary Clinton. What's happened in Libya? What's happened in Syria? What's happened in Iraq? What's happened, in Afghanistan? All these countries, you have rabid fanatics who have come to power.
Yes.
And that, frankly, is exactly what is happening in Bangladesh. It is a problem, and we'll have to face up to it squarely.
Okay.
But this, fortunately, we have a president who's willing to face up to it, although not in terms of combat elements,
okay.
but we have combat elements,
okay.
face up to it
okay.
The way India needs to.
Okay.
And that's a welcome relief today.
Yes, Dr. J.T. Bhattacharya, let me quickly, of course, take that to you as well now. On, of course, what these funds were, of course, meant for, what you make of course, this, expose now, and also at the end of the day, the big question, of course, was the US seeking to interfere in the Indian elections, in the Indian political process? What was happening earlier? The fact, of course, also is that Dr. Jaideep Bhattacharya, you have a situation where, there was money being allocated for increasing voter turnout. Now, why would the US want to increase voter turnout in India, firstly? How it was, proceeding to do so? And at the end of the day, of course, Dr. Bhattacharya, who was funding this mission and where the money was going for?
Hypothetical
Dr. Bhattacharya, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, now we can hear you. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that let's pose the hypothetical counter situation. Let's say India is funding for increased voter turnout in US. How would the world take it? How would US take it? That India is funding $21 million for increased turnout in the US elections. That will clearly not be acceptable. I think to start with, let's just look at what US aid stands for. I think that pause between US and aid makes it sound as if there is aid being given from US. But if you break down the acronym, it's US Agency for International Development, the same thing as what is at the end of CIA. It is USA. And A stands for an agency which has been created for interference in other nations. $21 million is 180 crores. I mean, those who don't convert, this 180 crores, that's a lot of money. And as Sanjeev Sanyal is rightly asking, who was it given to? We have the right to ask. And why there is a blatant interference in somebody else's sovereign process. Electioneering is a sacred sovereign process, and openly the US government is interfering here. And if you take it to Bangladesh, it becomes even more severe. It is to strengthen the political landscape. I mean, to start with, what was wrong with the political landscape? Did we start strengthening the political landscape in US when there was apparently a backsliding of democracy in US, where there was attacks on their parliament by the people? There was a former president being sent to jail to eliminate him as a political candidate. And if you look at the pattern of intervention from US, as Professor Nalapat very articulately laid out, wherever they have interfered, largely it has led to an Islamic state cropping up and the people suffering from that Islamic state. We have seen that in Afghanistan, we have seen that in Iran, and we see that getting repeated in Bangladesh. So we don't really understand what is it that the US government is trying to achieve. And that's a huge problem. Now, do keep in mind that US aid is only one of the many agencies. So what is it that the deep state of US wants to do? We are still not clear. There is digital media, there is social media, there are financial tools, there are banking regulations, and a lot of what happens in the world is controlled by US systems and processes. So if the deep state in US really wants to reach out, what this line item of USAID is showing is a small interference compared to what US can really bring down upon the rest of the world. So I'll be very curious, what else is the US doing? Clearly, I mean, on the ground, we see incomprehensible interventions happening, such as stopping a nuclear power plant from coming up that India badly needs, a copper plant from being stopped, which again, copper is something that India badly needs. So whatever India badly needs, we suddenly see a lot of opposition to it from the very people who are going to benefit from it. It's surprising, and therefore the question comes up is who is funding them again and again and again as a pattern. We can almost bet that if there is a large development project, there will be a significant intervention coming in, huge amount of money thrown at it. The last one that we see is the whole development of Nicobar Island, where again we see opposition coming up for no particular reason.
Yes.
For something that is stopping development from happening. So clearly there's a pattern, and we need to know what else is the US government trying to do.
Okay, let me go back across to Ambassador Bashwani Mukherjee. I know Sumit Peer also wants to come back in, but Ambassador Mukherjee, also now, money being allocated for Bangladesh. Now one wonders what that was for as well, where that money for Bangladesh was also going, and at the end of the day also, whether that was also part of the funds used to topple the erstwhile Sheikh Hasina government, as certain analysts have alleged was happening at the behest of the deep state.
It is very, very clear that the US deep state was very uncomfortable with the creation of Bangladesh, right from 1971. Let's not forget that it was a US president along with his Secretary of State who sent the 7th Fleet to bomb Kolkata harbor, but fortunately we liberated Bangladesh before that happened. They have never been happy with the secular regime of Mujib, and they have their own man there. We were talking about what CIA stands for. Well, I don't know what CIA stands for, but I know what Muhammad Yunus stands for. And I think the whole world knows what Muhammad Yunus stands for. So, in the case of Bangladesh, they had a ready-made person who was waiting to take over. He flew down a day after Sheikh Hasina was forced to leave without even signing her resignation letter. So, in theory, according to the Bangladesh constitution, this is a totally illegal interim regime. But does that bother those who funnel those funds? Not at all, because according to the US deep state, there are two kinds of international law, Uday. One is for the US deep state and the other one is for the others, which is my answer to Dr. Bhattacharya, who posed a very relevant question that what would happen if India had done it? What would have happened would have been outrage. My goodness, these brown people sitting in that little dirty little polluted place of theirs with the mosquitoes and the infection and the rest of it, how dare they think they are equal to us? How dare they think they can use their money to manipulate the internal affairs of state? Only we, the great American deep state, has taken upon itself the right to do so. That is how the deep state operates. In that process, did they ever ask themselves the question that if they destabilize Bangladesh and becomes a failed state, it will not just inconvenience Myanmar and China, it will severely inconvenience and maybe threaten the territorial integrity of India's northeast and the east. Do they really want to destabilize India? Do they really want to destabilize the world's largest democracy of 1.2 billion people? Have they thought it through? Either when they try to interfere in our elections or when they try to destabilize and bring about regime change in Bangladesh? Not at all. Just like they never thought through what the world would think when they ran away from Afghanistan like cowards, when they ran away from Vietnam like cowards, and the sight of Afghans loyal to the Americans clinging to the wheels of that aircraft. What kind of lesson does it show to the world? That the American deep state is unreliable, and when things go wrong, they run away, leaving their compradors behind. That is the American deep state to this. They've given an excellent demonstration, and that's why I'm very proud of my young compatriot Sanjeev Sanyal for having bravely brought out exactly what the whole of India and I'm sure half the world, including in the United States, is thinking: where did this? Who got this $21 million? I'm grateful for those who translated it, because I'm never very good at translating millions into crores. It's an enormous amount of money. Who got it? And if it was given to Indians
Right.
to bring democracy, then I'm sorry, Uday, we went into colonization.
Okay.
Because Indians betrayed Indians.
Okay.
I just hope they stop doing that now.
Sumit P.
Yeah, Uday, I want to add a couple of points here, adding to the discussion. Look, there are 3-4 names which have come out, like what Dr. Sav asked, where did the money go from? Let me tell you, sir. The first name there's a gentleman called Mike Benz. He was ex-Home Department. He now has left, and he says there are NGOs like Atlantic Council. These people have got millions of dollars of money to fund all the dangerous activities of so-called USAID and deep state. There's another network called Internet Networks. Now, this Internet Networks, they have few thousand journalists which are on their payroll. In India, there are 86 journalists which are on their payroll, and they were constantly funding the money to spill venom against Prime Minister Modi. Anything to do with the achievements of Hindu, anything to do with the achievements of India, anything to do which talks about the greatness of Indian civilization, how to bring it up. Even this NGO went and ran these campaigns of anti-Hindu in American universities. They were all funding it. It doesn't go here. He also claims that US top tech companies, Facebook, YouTube, Google, Twitter, and X, they were summoned and they were told to, kind of censor the content, which is pro BJP, which is pro Modi, and which is pro India. That is why you saw in 2019, what do you call, WhatsApp suddenly came. This is the video you can forward. They can only forward one video to one recipient. You cannot forward more the videos. So even if you come up with a YouTube video, if depending on your inclination, you will get the views. You might have the best content in the world. You will not be able to go more than 10,000 people, but you might come up with something crappy. It will reach 1 million people. Again, that was censored. They were given specific, instructions to censor the content. And the most dangerous part is that even by the end of the Trump's tenure, they were not listening to Trump. They clearly told Trump, "You are not our boss. We get our money from USAID. We are the Home Department. We decide what to do with this money." So literally, the Home Department of America was run by US deep state. Was not even run by Trump. And when it comes to Biden, he was literally never in control of things. Everybody was running everything. I mean, the person who could not step up or down, he will walk right when he has to walk left. He's aeroplane as a fighter jet and things like that. It's a medical condition he had. With that kind of a run, it was a free run for these deep state people. They were literally running everything. So the laundry list is not only this 20 million, sir. The laundry list is hundreds of millions of dollars which were channelized through various people, various systems, and the motive and the mission was India, Modi, BJP, anyway, any day, anyhow. That is what they did. And it is very clear now. I mean, all the names which have come out, and these are not our allegations or media report. This is your former person in charge of the Home Department, a big gun of Home Department, telling in the American media, and it's your guy, your media telling us all the names and giving us all the numbers. We are just repeating what he has said. After that, there is not an iota of doubt. They were all trying anyhow, anyway to get down Prime Minister Modi. And Bangladesh was created, what Basmati ma'am rightly said, to destabilize Northeast, to cut our Northeast, to make chicken neck our vulnerable.
I'm running out of time. I'll just give the last word to Professor Nalapat now. I have to take a break. 30 seconds.
Look, let me tell you one thing, Uday, that enough documentation has come out, and finally, these whistleblowers are now got the freedom to speak out. In the past, if they spoke out, they'd be arrested.
Okay.
What happened to Edward Snowden? Edward Snowden exposed the fact that the illegal wiretapping was going on by the NSA in the United States. Illegal wiretapping of US citizens without a warrant. And of course, what happened to Snowden? He was hounded mercilessly, and he landed up in Hong Kong, of all places, and then Russia. Had they got him back before he became a Russian citizen, they would have found out everything about what exactly,
Right.
how much he revealed. But they didn't want to get him back for a simple reason that he would reveal their guilty hand.
Okay.
And the reality is, Uday, that they have a guilt. They don't like Prime Minister Modi because he stands up for India.
Okay.
They didn't like President Trump because he stands up for American people.
All right.
Against this small cabal of officials. And that is why these two leaders were disliked, and that is why they worked against them, and tons of money was provided by the American Treasury,
Yes.
the American taxpayer, for these people
Okay.
to do the mischief.
All right. Well, and of course, it has ended now. As the Trump administration has said, a big decision, of course, taken, but questions still remain over where those funds were going in the first place. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us. Let's take a short break. Much more on the other side.